The purpose of our organization is to start right here in Harlem, which has the largest concentration of people of African descent that exists anywhere on this earth. There are more Africans here in Harlem than exist in any city on the African continent, because that's what you and I are, Africans. The Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights are the principles in which we believe, and that these documents, if put into practice, represent the essence of mankind's hopes and good intentions, desirous that all Afro-American people and organizations should henceforth unite so that the welfare and well-being of our people will be assured. We are resolved to reinforce the common bond of purpose between our people by submerging all of our differences and establishing non-sectarian constructive programs for human rights. We hereby present this charter. Number one, the establishment. The Organization of Afro-American Unity shall include all people of African descent in the Western Hemisphere. In essence, what it is saying, instead of you and me running around here seeking allies in our struggle for freedom, in the Irish neighborhood or the Jewish neighborhood or the Italian neighborhood, we need to seek some allies among people who look something like we do. And once we get their allies, it's time out for you and me to stop running away from the wolf right into the arms of the fox, looking for some kind of help. That's a drag.
The Black Power Movement. The foundations of Black Power. Black Power began as a revolutionary movement in the 1960s and 1970s. It emphasized racial pride, economic empowerment, and the creation of political and cultural institutions. During this era, there was a rise in the demand for Black history courses, a greater embrace of African culture, and a spread of raw artistic expression displaying the realities of African Americans. Black Power emphasized Black self-reliance and self-determination more than integration. Proponents believed African Americans should secure their human rights by creating political and cultural organizations that served their interests. They insisted that African Americans should have power over their own schools, businesses, community services, and local government. They focused on combating centuries of humiliation by demonstrating self-respect and racial pride, as well as celebrating the cultural accomplishments of Black people around the world. The Black Power movement frightened most of white Americans and unsettled scores of Black Americans. Black Power. The term Black Power has various origins. Its roots can be traced to author Richard Wright's non-fiction work, Black Power, published in 1954. In 1965, the Lawrence County, Alabama Freedom Organization, LCFO, used the slogan, Black Power for Black People, for its political candidates. The next year saw Black Power enter the mainstream. Malcolm X. The inspiration behind much of the Black Power movement. Malcolm X's intellect, historical analysis, and powerful speeches impressed friends and foe alike. The primary spokesman for the Nation of Islam until 1964. He traveled to Mecca that year and returned more optimistic about social change. He saw the African American freedom movement as part of international struggle for human rights and anti-colonialism. After his ATN in 1965, his memory continued to inspire the rising tide of Black Power. Malcolm X's expression of black pride and self-determination continued to resonate with and engage many African Americans long after his death in February 1965. For example, listening to recordings of his speeches inspired African American soldiers to organize GIS united against the war in Vietnam in 1969. Stokely Carmichael set a new tune for the Black Freedom Movement when he demanded Black Power in 1966. Drawing on long traditions of racial pride and Black nationalism, Black Power advocates enlarged and enhanced the accomplishments and tactics of the civil rights movement. Rather than settle for legal rights and integration into white society, they demanded the cultural, political, and economic power to strengthen Black communities so they could determine their own futures. During the Meredith March Against Fear in Mississippi, Student Coordinating Committee SNCC Chairman Stokely Carmichael rallied marchers by chanting, "We want Black Power." Black Power around the world. Revolutions in other nations inspired advocates of Black Power. The African revolutions against European colonialism in the 1950s and 1960s were exciting examples of success. Wars of national liberation in Southeast Asia and Northern Africa offered still more encouragement. Stokely Carmichael's 5-month world speaking tour in 1967 made Black Power a key to revolutionary language in places like Algeria, Cuba, and Vietnam. So there you have it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Bye-bye.
Now, let us begin with the modern period of, I guess we could start with 1956 for our generation. This was the beginning of the rise of Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King decided that in Montgomery, Alabama, black people had to pay the same prices on the buses as did white people, but we had to sit in the back. And we could only sit in the back if every available seat was taken by a white person. If a white person was standing, a black person could not sit. So Dr. King and his associates got together and said, "This is inhuman. We will boycott your bus system." Now understand what a boycott is. A boycott is a passive act. It is the most passive political act that anyone can commit, a boycott. Because what the boycott was doing was simply saying, "We will not ride your buses." No sort of antagonism against for black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and will be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one fallacious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. Has none.